Good afternoon. I'm Gigi Davis. I'm the Job and Internship Coordinator with Piedmont Virginia Community College, and we are so very fortunate today to have Matt Coffey from Augusta Health talking with us today about emergency medical services, his career, their hiring over at Augusta Health, and just general industry trends. So Matt, we're gonna let you kick it off with that you can talk about your career journey and how you got going with it.
All right. So I started off with fire rescue as a volunteer, just like a large percent of people did. It was back in the early 90s. And I actually, even going through high school and college aspect, I didn't have any idea about this line of work or anything else. We actually had a chimney fire at my parents' house and nobody showed up. And that's how I found that the local volunteer fire department was needing people. And I was working at a third shift type job. So I had time and availability. In a short period of time, I kind of realized, hey, this is something I want to do. I want to do this as a career. So I actually got my EMT to become a career firefighter. Wanted to chase fire trucks like everybody does in their early 20s. Within getting hired in '99, I was part of the first group with Waynesboro Fire that brought Waynesboro Fire from being a BLS agency to an ALS agency. And that was when I quickly realized that, hey, by doing this side of EMS, that's the future with fire rescue. That's the future there. And it was also about the same time that you can see what you do makes a difference. You know, like the pinnacle in fire rescue is to pull somebody from a burning building. With modern technology, with education, you're not seeing that on the fire side. You know, you're getting people out of their homes before they're getting trapped. You're having smoke detectors that are up there. So, you know, that right there is very, very few and far between, which is a good thing. On the EMS side of it, you get that interaction and you get that you make a difference, you know, more often on a closer basis, you know. Like the pinnacle for that is, you know, hey, if you have somebody who arrests right in front of you and you bring them back and they walk out of the hospital. Okay. But you also see the facts of, you know, you make a difference with somebody. So, you know, that's kind of what got me hooked. And I will date myself for those who look through there. I was a shock trauma, then I was an intermediate. I did the first, actually I was a shock trauma, then a cardiac tech, and did the first bridge in Virginia, both through CEs and classroom, bridging from CT to intermediate. And then after that, I went and got my paramedic. So yeah, I've done a number of different roles. I went from Orange County, I went from Waynesboro to work for Albemarle County Fire Rescue, which was a little bit more of an advanced department as far as where they're seeing EMS, what their protocols were driven for, which was great. They have their own set of protocols now, where they're not following the local regional ones and stuff that's being done. They're able to be very progressive and very proactive. Had some great O&Ds that we're able to work underneath of. So, you know, the stuff that Albemarle County started doing ahead of a curve for the whole area was, you know, RSI for, you know, being able to put patients down, being able to take care of their airways, secure that, a little bit more freedom when it came to doing narcotics and pain management and control and support for that, which was a great advantage. They were also in this area, and I'll say between both sides of the mountain, they were one of the first ones that had fire departments, that had ambulances, and made up a majority of what was going on. They made a statement way early on in their setup when they started in 1993, when they became their own entity, that they were going to provide ALS coverage to the citizens of Albemarle County. So every piece of apparatus that Albemarle County Fire Rescue staffs has a medic on it, and it's a paramedic now. So go ahead.
But that's actually a great question. So when somebody goes to volunteer at the fire department, do they have to have their EMT already? Do they, you know?
Volunteer, you do not. Okay. And on both sides of the mountain, if you are volunteering with an agency, that agency will pay for the training that you get. They will pay for you to get, if you start on the fire side, they will pay for you to get your firefighter 1. They will also pay for you to get your EMT on the fire side, because the fire departments run first response.
Right.
So, or if EMS is what you want to do, and to be in an ambulance, you have Western Rescue, you have Charlottesville Albemarle, You have Albemarle County Fire Rescue that has volunteers, and you can be on an ambulance as well. So those are all over there. Those are all career systems. On this side of the mountain, you still have Waynesboro Rescue has volunteers, Stewart Draft Rescue, Waynesboro Fire Department. All of the agencies still have volunteers that go with them as well.
But to be more competitive if you have both the firefighting and the EMT combination for a job.
If you want a job in either realm, you have to have your EMT to get hired, and you have to have Fire One. Now, what is happening is that because these agencies are shooting through pools of applicants very fast, I know that Albemarle County has done a no requirements base to be hired. So in other words, if you're interested in being in fire rescue and you have zero training, they have had classes where they bring you in with nothing, and during the recruit school, they get you your EMT and they get you your firefighter one. So you do that through recruit school, and you have to maintain and you have to pass in order to be hired full time.
Right, so they are doing their own training. That's because of course we at PVCC we have our training
You
program.
have your own training too. But what they've seen is that, and I can speak with Albemarle County, and I had a conversation with one of them yesterday. They actually got some accreditations with their EMT class.
Okay.
And because they saw a need that, hey, they weren't getting the applicants in the pool of applicants for diversity and everything else that they wanted to have. So by offering this up as far as, hey, you come on with zero requirements, you have to pass these levels to maintain your employment, we'll hire you and we'll train you. So
yeah, when we talked to Ethan, he had said how if somebody had their EMT that they could keep progressing. We can count those certifications that they got elsewhere and then keep building, help them build into that.
And what's great, because I know of a number of people who have taken their intermediate and taken their other skills and went through PVC's programming, getting their paramedic and use those to help, because they got the abbreviated, they didn't have to sit through the whole 2 years. They were able to, hey, take these college classes, pair their bridge with that and help them out a huge difference.
So that's kind of tied into the, everybody always wants to know about money. Do you have a sense of the differences between the money between EMT versus, all the way to paramedic with the different levels? Or I know I didn't warn you about.
So I'll speak to over there. Each agency is a little bit different in how they set that up. Okay. And an average ordeal is around between $65,000 and $8,000 difference from a firefighter EMT to a firefighter paramedic.
Okay.
That's going to be relative. Now you go to Northern Virginia, that's going to jump up even more. Some of them put it in as far as, it's a stipend. Some of them have it into the pay. Some of it have it, there's an increase in this and, for what's going on. But roughly, $6,500 to $8,000 is the difference between an EMT and a paramedic.
Yeah, so do you guys do the differential shift pay differences like happens in nursing? And because, if people work the midnight shift, they get more money. Over
here at Augusta Health in the hospital setting here, our transport teams that are the differential settings. In the 911 world, a lot of those ones are working what's called a 24-hour shift schedule. So they have built-in overtime that's built in or built-in days off that they're getting for that. They work on average 9 to 11 days a month off of a 24-hour schedule.
Wow.
They're out there for 24 hours.
Right.
So there's that kind of built in.
Well, I kind of jumped way ahead. Didn't mean to do that, but
No.
So
ask all the questions.
When you're involved in hiring, what do you typically, because I heard you talk about the volunteering.
Yep.
Do you look for from candidates? Internships? Are there internships in this industry? Is it mostly volunteer? What do you look for from an ideal candidate?
So what I'm looking for here on the transport side is what type of experience do they have? For me here, I don't have the ability to train somebody with nothing, so they got to have something that comes in. I've brought in a person who had just got their EMT. They already had that certification, and we're able to work with them and train them, and it went great. They were a good fit through the interview process. They were very energetic. So I do look at, hey, what is somebody's past history showing? Have they volunteered before? What's their end goal for career? Even if it's like, look, I want to learn more about interfacility transport because I want to be a respiratory therapist. Okay, I know that we may have you for a period of time, but you're interested in increasing your education and learning for this side of stuff along the way. So you see a lot of different people that kind of come through the transport side. I've met some very intelligent individuals. It's a different, the transport side that's done through here, the interfacility side is a different animal than on the 911 side. The 911 side, you have a patient, you have a problem, you got to get them to a level of care. You do some intern fixes and it's a quick deal, and then you transition what it is. On the interfacility side of it, that basic life-saving measures have been taken. Now you're dealing with keeping that patient in a stable mode when you move them from one hospital to another, or you moving them to another facility setup. There is the whole fact of, you're taking somebody that's been discharged and you're taking them home. That's an easy ordeal, easy to go through. But there's also the times where you're taking a patient who is medically unstable and going to a higher level of care. So they're on a vent, they're being given blood, you've got multiple pumps that are running. And so it's a different mindset, different gears. It's more engaging as an ALS provider and to use those skills on a different level.
So it sounds like it's never ever the same, or you really don't know what to expect.
That's a great thing that multiple people who do this job say, that every day you come to work, you're going to have something different. It's never the same day twice. I can't say it's never the same patient twice, but it's never the same day twice. And it is, you never know what's going to be. You have an idea of what's going on, but in the same boat, it's not uncommon that, hey, there may be a bad motor vehicle accident that came in over here to Augusta Health, and we're not a level 1 trauma center. So whereas we can handle a lot of different stuff and a lot of great stuff for cardiac care, for stroke care, and moving into neuro, some major trauma stuff, it's got to go to UVA. So they'll stabilize and send out. And if it's bad weather, a helicopter can't fly. So ground transport's the way to go. It's 30 some miles, 45 minutes on average between here to UVA. And so now you've got that patient that they know has got, some major fractures that's going on, or they've been put down and intubated. So they're on a vent and we're taking over there. So you've got multiple things. You're dealing with pain management control. You're dealing. And the other thing about in this line of work and the 911 side of work is that nobody ever wants to wake up in the morning and say, I want to go for a ride in an ambulance today. Okay. So you see people when they're not having their best moments, and you have a chance to make a difference.
Yep. And so that when you think of the ideal candidate, is somebody who wants to make a difference, somebody who doesn't need structure / routine. And what else would you say, like personality wise, or what else would you say you see typically in your strong candidates?
To do this line of work across the board, you're going to have some form of a type A personality. Okay. The kicker is that you have to match that type A personality with somebody who is going to be a team player and a team member and work together as a crew. You have to be able to work with each other. You have to be able to work with your partner. You have to be able to interact and everything else. So it's a combination of that, of somebody who's wants to make a difference, somebody who does have a type A personality by majority, is able to think on their own and work together as a group. Those are some big traits that you look for to see.
Right. So how do you source your candidates? Do you just put a job posting out there saying, hey, we have this opening, or do you utilize resources like LinkedIn or industry-based types of resources? Because I know Ethan had mentioned one that was on this side of the mountain. How do you find?
Augusta Health has their own website that they post stuff to. I know that our recruiters that we have, which are great for the hospital, for nursing, and then we piggytail on them with transportation. They do use LinkedIn, they use some other resources as well. We'll also send out information to local agencies, says, hey, volunteer that we're hiring, we're looking for these candidates here. And a word of mouth goes through, which is a big one that's utilized. EMS world is a very close world. People know people and for some way or another. And so, it's always word of mouth goes a lot. the job postings go a lot for there, is how it's found out for what's going on.
So networking is kind of a helpful.
Networking is a huge thing, which goes back to that whole part of, working as a team, working as a dynamic, and knowing everybody around you. This is not a lot of work where you're in your own little bubble. You reach out and you touch a number of different agencies and a number of different people.
So when you have an opening, about how many candidates do you have that apply in general or average? Because that's where I find that sometimes people go, oh, I'm not going to apply because there's just so many people applying. I'm not going to be a strong enough candidate.
It really varies as to what's going on. So when I came here about a year ago, I brought in, I hired a whole extra crew that came in shortly thereafter. I was able to get that in and get some PRN positions. And I've had some good follow through. Now, some of that is that I reached out to people that I knew that were going to make good choices, that were a good candidate for there, and said, hey, we're going to be hiring, here's some potential if you know other people that are interested, and put the word of mouth out that way. And I probably had about 15 to 20 applicants for, 4 positions that we had coming through in a short period of time. And then they were closed out for that. So that worked out well. I've got some PRN positions that we're going to have posted up through there that are there for, kind of work as need be. And we're looking with some EMTs for that right now currently. And hopefully in the coming 2021, we're going to have another hiring session for some full-time.
Okay. Yeah, so all PRN are just part-time because it's work when needed.
Work when needed.
Yeah.
And the hospital classifies, there's a difference. Part-time is a guaranteed 20 hours or so a week, and PRN is as needed basis.
Right.
So those are the two. I got to make sure I clarify the differences.
Right. So that's a great way to get your foot in the door for when
It's a great way to get your foot in the door. And people have also used it if you want to get your foot in the door into the hospital, and you have this ability, and it works there because you can get into the hospital, and after being for a period of time, you can potentially move into other areas and everything else.
Great. Well, so it sounds like it's a great way to kick off your career. But that's what I had mentioned about internships. I have not heard of as many internships in the healthcare industry as I do for other industries, but am I wrong about that for EMS?
It's not so much as an internship. I guess where you're seeing that is it's used as a voluntary kind of deal.
Right.
They volunteer at an agency, they run, they see how they like it, which that also gives somebody the benefit to learn if this is for them or not. It's a very different mannerism.
Right. So in the police science field, they do these ride-alongs. Do you guys do that? Because I would think patient confidentiality, and do you do the ride?
So on our side of the fence, as far as for what we're doing here at Augusta Health, we don't have a ride-along necessarily with here. Some volunteer agencies do have the ride-along, and just for that ordeal that says, hey, you're interested in this, you want to join, and they do have a ride-along program. Now, there's some stipulations that go with this. There's certain type of patients that they'll say, hey, if we run this, you may be in the front of the ambulance and won't be around,
right,
and everything else. But it also helps them to kind of experience what's involved in EMS and what's involved in being an EMT, and they can kind of see some of the aspects of that right there.
So I know an EMT can be as young as 16 to get, and so with the ride-alongs, could it be even younger than that, or is it the 16?
And that's where a lot of the agencies have their own, the volunteers especially have their own different policies, and I don't want to speak to what they have,
right, but
some of it would involve, especially if they're under the age of 18, then there's certain things that they're not going to be in the back of the ambulance with.
Right.
Just even if they're a full-time volunteer, they're classified as a junior member, and so it kind of limits some of the stuff that they can see and do just because of that.
So then when a call is made, then you have to evaluate that before they couldn't just get on the ambulance.
They get on the ambulance, but they may stay in the front of the ambulance.
I see.
So they'll ride along and be in the front with the driver and
right,
everything else, and they won't be doing direct patient care or involvement.
Right. So how has COVID impacted your job? I would imagine.
So I made the change from 911 to hospital pre-COVID. And very shortly after being in this position, COVID came along, and it has had a huge, huge impact. As far as wearing masks with every call that we go on, And
Right.
and actually we wear masks all around the hospital. From the time you get out of your car, you're on the property, you have some form of face protection that's on, and throughout the day, eye protection as well, face shields, goggles,
Yeah.
the added PPE for unknown COVID patient. That the advantage that we have over the 911 side is we know 90% of the patients are already COVID positive that we are transporting that are COVID positive versus the unknown that you have pre-hospital. Because if it's tested here and we've got to move them, the hospital has already had the test that's done.
Right.
So one of the things that started here in the past few weeks is that any patient that leaves the hospital going to another facility has to have a COVID test.
Right.
So if they test positive, we already know that ahead of time. The added deconning and cleaning that goes to our ambulances was a step and a change, but we've managed to get through it. We've got everybody that's on board. It's made the EMS is never predictable.
Right.
It wasn't predictable before COVID, but COVID has made it even less predictable.
Right.
Right. It's put the challenge that everybody in the public's head is that if they had a small, say they had some chest pain, it just didn't feel good, they may not go to the hospital right away because they don't want to go there because there's COVID patients and everything else. So what we're seeing in the hospital now is that people are actually waiting longer to come and be seen, and they're actually sicker. So the acuity is a lot higher for what we've had. The volume dropped way far in April. Across the board for everybody. Everybody's volume dropped in April and has been slowly coming back up. Whereas we're not back up, nobody's really back up now to what they were pre-COVID, but what a large number of hospitals that I've talked to and everything else is that the patients that they are seeing are sicker.
Right.
So you're dealing with that aspect of stuff as well.
That's really fascinating. So you started alluding to it, having worked on both sides of the mountain.
Yep.
What do you say are the big differences? Because of course, quite a few PVCC students, even though I tell them all the time, it's much more affordable to live in Waynesboro over the mountain than Charlottesville. But I think there's a little bit of difference about who you were dealing with on both sides of the mountain, right?
There is a difference in the type of patients that you see a little bit. There's the same, you're going to see motor vehicle accidents. Both sides of the mountain have the interstate that runs through it. And we actually have two interstates over here being 64 and 81. Both sets deal with train traffic and everything else that goes through that. There's a Charlottesville airport that's over there. You still have Weir's Cave and Eagle's Nest over here that are smaller in comparison. So the other things is you got UVA that's over there in Charlottesville, which is a huge college.
Yep.
Mary Baldwin's over here. You have Fishburne over here, much smaller bases of deal, but you have some of that deal. You don't have the college style that's at UVA.
Right.
The affordability is over here. The protocols for a while were a lot more advanced over there for providers, and you're starting to see that change come out over here to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more proactive. I think both sides have come a long way in the past, they've come way far in 20 years and they've made some leaps in the past 10. So there's advantages to both sides of what you're looking at.
Right.
Both sides have, career fire rescue agencies that are doing fire and EMS. Both sides have volunteer agencies that are still supplementing in through there and running and doing a great job with it. So on either side of the mountain that you live in, there's areas that you can get your training for free. You can get your education that you want to get, and you can see if it's what you want to do. I think that benefits on both sides right there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Blue Ridge Community College has a program too.
Yep. Blue Ridge has it, and then the local councils also actually help teach some classes as well. So you have the TGEMS set that runs over in Charlottesville, and you have Central Shenandoah EMS that's over here in the Valley. And they have the ability to do some classes as well.
I bet you don't mind missing not dealing with Foxfield or any of those.
It gives a challenge out every year. You've got.
I always was amazed to watch what happened at Foxfield, but I mean, I miss the horses, but. But anyway, so do you have particular, I mean, I know it's a very structured training based on the certification. Do you have suggestions on what classes that might be supplemental to that you think really
If
benefit?
somebody was interested in becoming a paramedic and they were an EMT already, one of the things that I would recommend them to do as far as class wise is anatomy and physiology.
Mm-hmm.
It's a prerequisite a lot of times, and there's some abbreviated versions that are geared towards paramedics and helping out through that. But the A&P class is a great one to take, and everything else. Also to help educate, to relearn parts of the body that you don't think about as much as an EMT, and kind of help get you prepared for the paramedic class. Some biology classes as well. It's not bad. Another one that's not hit on much at all, but sociology and interactions of people. You have to be able to, in this line of work, no matter you do pre-hospital or you do inter-facility, you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to, read them, get on their level, and understand that you're seeing them at not their best time. And what can you do to comfort and make a difference? And that sociology side of it, I think would help providers out in the long run.
Yeah, I am a big fan of psychology and sociology courses, because that's where, I've had some folks, say that the stress of the job gets a little intensive, and that they like to take these courses in preparation to transition into not quite as stressful healthcare careers. And of course, psychology and sociology can fulfill our social sciences prereqs. So that's where you, because I like the mental health side of this career field is, I hear it, it's a component. What suggestions do you have for folks who are thinking about this career field?
Have an outlet. Find an outlet. Find something that separates you from work, separates you from what you do as a volunteer. If you choose to do it that way, it doesn't matter. And this is my 2 cents opinion. It doesn't matter if you're volunteering, if your career, if you've done it for 5 minutes or 500 years. Okay. You got to have an outlet, because you're going to see things, you're going to be in the middle of things that will weigh on you over time. Everybody has a breaking point. Everybody needs to find an outlet. And I don't think that society is ready to deal with the long-term aspects of that for EMS. And I'll say first responders, to include police in that ordeal as well.
Oh, very much so.
It's a known fact of what our soldiers see when they're at war, and it's called PTSD. And, it's affiliated that, hey, this is wartime, this is this. And I don't think that side of stuff is ready to deal with what EMS does on a daily basis. They've seen it from the people that were at 9/11 up in New York, at the Pentagon. They've seen it from other natural disasters that have gone on with these providers over time. And I think it's an area that is going to get attention in the next 10 years or less.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to evolve.
When I have a student who says, well, I don't want to carry a gun, or I can't physically, because I know firefighters have to have they have to be really strong. And they're like, I don't think I'm physically able to do that. And I talk about emergency communications jobs, which is very stressful, because you're the one who's routing the call and just making sure the emergency personnel show up at the right place, and you're helping talk the person through. When I hear some of those calls when they're released, and I go, wow. So it's where, it's always fascinating to hear all the elements of what's involved with the job.
And that's one that's overlooked a whole lot, is the dispatchers. They're the ones who receive the 911 calls. They're hearing the person on the other end who is frantic, whether they're, it's the husband calling because his wife's in labor and
Right.
Water's breaking, so trying to talk them through that, or, the spouse that found their loved one unresponsive in bed and trying to do CPR until 911 gets there. I mean, it's, or, hey, Johnny fell and hurt his knee, and calls 911. So they hear the end of the person who's in distress and bringing them the resources. And a lot of times they don't even know how the whole thing ends out. So
Right.
they're left hanging. They send the people there, they send the resources that are there, and sometimes they don't always get the follow up for, hey, how did this thing end and what went on? But yes,
Right.
it's another very key component that goes across the board.
Interesting. So that's, you kind of alluded to industry trends. Do you see, and and how the field will change? Are there other things that you think will pop up, in addition to it being a growing field?
How it's going to choose to grow, it's still out there. There's community paramedicine that's coming up. It's already having trends and how it takes form in Virginia and gets put out there. That's going to be another big aspect. How it's whether tied to home health, whether it's tied to the 911 side, but that's a huge area. I think the other part you're going to see is the educational standpoints of it and having maybe different levels of a paramedic. In other words, a paramedic advanced, a paramedical for critical care, a paramedic dealing with different aspects of that future for what they want to specialize in. Kind of similar how from nursing's gone for some areas. I think you may see some side of that because it's so many, it's been so broad for such a long period of time that you're now seeing those specialties break out. Like long distance transports is different than doing short interfacility, short transports. Because you're dealing with patients for different amount of times with different drugs that are used and interactions that are done. We talked about being physically fit and everything else, which is a key component to all of it, but it's also the technology has the power stretchers that raise up and lower. At Augusta Health, and I know a number of agencies that went to it, we have power load systems in the back of the ambulance that you put the stretcher up against and it actually lifts the stretcher up and loads it in the ambulance. So for somebody who feels like, hey, maybe I'm not fit enough to do this, the tools and the resources are there with a lot of agencies to help save back injuries and help save the aspect for everybody else.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really impressive.
So the technology has just been leaps and bounds above what people are doing and what the abilities to help the providers are out there.
So do you feel like this field has a lot of constant learning with especially technology that's coming out? And so you feel like you really need to stay fresh and interested in continuing?
So to keep your certifications up as far as for EMS, you have to maintain CE hours for your EMT, for your paramedic, and that's just keeping you up to breast on that. But yes, everything is constantly growing, evolving, and changing. As far as the using the computers to doing your reports, to GPS tracking the apparatus, to getting your calls received from dispatch through the computer system and seeing the stuff there. You have to be able to adapt and change and grow with each environment. Yes, it's, and I think that what COVID has brought through here with telemedicine and interactability is only going to evolve that much faster as it equates to EMS. The community paramedicine aspect of it as well. I don't have the magic crystal ball that says this is what's going to be, but as much as we're starting to jump on telemedicine, I can even see that being incorporated into the EMS side in a number of years to where a doctor can be there in the back of an ambulance through a computer to help out with something that's going on.
Oh, interesting.
No, it's not right. It's not going to happen next month, but I can see that coming up into a future or some form of that aspect of it to help provide a higher level of care for those further out.
Well, when I heard something about robots doing healthcare, I go, what? Because I personally don't want a robot. I'd rather have a human do that.
A human element of interaction, somebody who can understand the pain that you're in.
Exactly. So knowing what you know today, what would you tell yourself to do when you were a student or when you were just starting out in this field?
More education sooner, would have got my paramedics sooner and started that trend sooner than what it was. If there's anything as far as where that goes right there, I wouldn't change what I've done or anything else. It's made me the provider that I am and interactive that I've done right now, but definitely always be open to education, always be open to learn, always be open to, don't be satisfied with what you have. There's always something that you're going to gain from everything. Even if you've, and I've known a number of people have done the same thing, that, they may take a class a second time because they're getting something different out of what they had. You see something different, or there are a number of seminars and sessions that go on, and everything else, and those are always great. I don't know how that's going to change with COVID now and not being able to have that type of meeting, but those things are great. I know here at the hospital, we've done some training through Zoom and WebEx meetings. Okay, some of those will have a presenter who will be in a room and presenting, and it goes out through WebEx and can interact in with Zoom. And even through those aspects, it's not the same as being in there with them, but you have the ability to do feedback afterwards, and you're still being kept up to date on some information and some training. Those are things that I highly recommend for anybody. Don't be satisfied with what you have. Always be willing to sit there and learn something new. There's always something new that's coming out. There's a new technique that's done. Like innovation, when we first had innovation 15 years ago and we were doing it, hey, you had the laryngoscopes and you had the twisty bulbs that went on. Then they went to fiber optics. Now they got digital video scopes to go in through there to see. The technology that's coming out, the training that's coming out, the tools that everybody's being given is growing, exponentially.
I think COVID made people realize more about intubation than they ever had before that. That it's like, this is not a pleasant experience.
No, nobody, like I said, nobody wants to wake up and find they've got a tube stuffed down their throat.
It's like, wear a mask, okay?
Yes.
So because we do have a few people on, so if they have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat, either one. Any kind of, if they're thinking about that, any kind of, these were all amazing suggestions and insights. So Matt, I really, really appreciate you taking this kind of time. I'm looking at my questions to see if I forgot anything. But are there other takeaways that, suggestions that you would, especially to make for somebody who is looking for a job right now in this industry? You mentioned the networking, you mentioned how, yes, Augusta posted on their site. Are there other, and volunteering being so important? Is there anything else that you would suggest? I mean, I don't know if you're on LinkedIn or if you know of other colleagues, because I have found.
I'm on LinkedIn. Somebody can reach out for me on through there.
Great.
I'm happy to do through that. If somebody wants a job right now, I know there's a ton of openings in different areas. Even if their dream job is to be a firefighter somewhere, that's a big one that a lot of people have. Start off somewhere, find a job doing EMS, find a job doing something through interfacility if that's where you want to do and get some experience. There's agencies that are hiring constantly. Like a dream job for a lot of people, or what people see as an entity, is going to work for a big department. You've got DC, you got Fairfax, you got Virginia Beach, you got Richmond, Chesterfield, Henrico. I can name off, Albemarle County, but even if you start somewhere and then work your way to where you want to be. Now is a time for anybody, and it goes back to, I really want to push the fact that this is something that, hey, I've never been in EMS. I've never done that line of work before. Find your local volunteer agency and talk to them. Everybody is looking for volunteers, and it's a great way for them to learn, hey, is this really something that I want to do? And it will, even at the volunteer level, you're giving something back to the community. You're getting something for yourself. The agencies will provide the training for you. They'll pay for the training. So, the opportunities are there for people who are interested.
I love that focus on community and community service. And when you started off with making a difference, I do think this career field is really, and COVID has contributed to making us realize how important it is that we have people interested in pursuing this career field. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or the Q&A. So, but again, so appreciate you taking this time. This was just, I always learn something, and even though we talked a little bit a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, I need to ask about that. Oh. So I so appreciate it. And of course, I'll be referring students your way. I'm like, which side are you on?
Not a problem. You know which way you want to face, just say over the hump.
So we hope we can send some good candidates your way, and thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for all your time and everything else. And if anybody contacts you with other questions, you have my email and everything else.
Right.
I'm happy to respond and help out as can be.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the beautiful afternoon. It seems like winter is here today.
Don't tell nobody, okay?
I was like, what happened to fall? What kind of went
That's right. Just disappeared.
Exactly. Well, take care.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.